All right, so how do we do this? This third problem, we have to estimate all these slopes, all these derivatives off these graphs. So, as we did in the last problem, we still remember that this is still the derivative, right? And so what I did is every place I saw for the first one, h of -2, every place I saw an x, I dropped in -2. So I'm going to examine this inside function first. So g of -2 looks to be about right there, which is 3 in my eyeball. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go find the slope of the f function at x equals 3. I have to do the same thing, the slope of the g function at -2, and I'm going to multiply those two answers. So I made this line earlier. I'm going to line it up. Well, let's see, f prime of 3. So 1, 2, 3. I'm going to try to line this up to make it look like a tangent line at x equals 3. It's not an exact thing. Let's see what that looks like. That probably is pretty good. Well, I'm seeing a slope maybe -1. I don't know. I'm thinking more of maybe -1's close enough. How about -2/3? I like that. So -2/3 is that slope. Now we're going to do that same thing down at g of -2. So I'm going to grab that line, slide it down here, try to fit that tangent line to it. That looks pretty. That looks pretty good. Maybe I can tweak that a little bit. What are we seeing? We're going to see in a slope of 1/2 maybe. A little bit bigger graph might do a better job of that. Up 2/3. What's wrong with that? I almost like that better. So that's going to be +2/3. Well, if I multiply those two slopes, I'm going to get -4/9. Okay, so that's what the derivative will be at -2. Granted, it's not an exact science, we're just trying to estimate it. But what we're doing is we're looking at the slopes, and I've shown you all these steps. H prime of 1. So every place I see a x, I'm going to go back and replace it with 1. -1. Get rid of those. All right, so h prime of 1. 1, 1, 1, 1. This isn't 1, is it? So what's g of 1? G of 1 looks to me to be 0. All right, so we're set there. Let's find out what f of 0 is. Well, I'm just looking at it right here. I'm not going to bother moving that line. That's the slope of 0. So if that's 0, doesn't matter what that is. So the slope here is 0. What did we say here? 4/9? Is it -4/9? I don't remember now. H prime of 3. Get rid of that since I don't remember that. H prime of 3. We are going to replace those 1s with 3s. 3, 3, 3. G of 3. 1, 2, 3. G of 3. I'm going to call that -1. That's still 3. What's f prime of -1? Let's grab that line. Move it up here. That look relatively good. How about a slope of -1/2? And g prime of 3. So we're going to take that line, slide it down here. Pretty darn close to 0. It's not exactly 0 though, but it's close. I don't know. I'm seeing right there, I'm seeing up 1/1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 maybe. Is it 1/6? I mean, this is a guess. If I multiply those two, I'll get negative 112. Okay, so that's what my estimates are this time through of those slopes. Okay, now comes the last part, and that's probably, is it the most important? I don't know. Let's do this. I guess I didn't do this. What values of h prime are equal to 0? Well, here's some things to worry about. I know that h prime of x equals f prime of g of x times g prime of x. And a lot of you fell down here because you didn't do any explanation of your thinking. Some of you did, which made some other errors. So let's talk about this. I know that the slope of f is 0 here at x equals 0. I also know it's 0 here when x equals positive 2. And you might even be able to argue that that slope is 0 there when x equals 5. So when x equals 0, when x equals 2, when x equals 5 are all places where this slope is equal to 0. So because that will be 0 times whatever, so it'll be 0. So now what we got to decide is what values of g, what value of x makes g be 0? Well, g is 0 there, so at negative 4. G is 0 here, at positive 1. And g is 0 here, at positive 5. So those are all places where f prime has a 0 slope. So those are 3 values of x where the derivative is 0. The other thing that I'd be concerned about is when is this equal to 0? Well, that function is equal to 0. The slope of that function is equal to 0 right there. And you could argue, I'm going to argue, make the case, if I can move this line out of the way, here we go, that it's 0 about there. So to me that looks like about 2.5. And it's also 0 at about negative 1.5. So I think there's 5 places where this function, this h function, has 0 slope. And that's how you tackle these kind of inexact kind of questions, making you think about what we're doing with derivatives.